My raised beds are still frozen solid, and if yours look anything like this, you're probably wondering, will spring ever get here? But this is the perfect moment to get ready, because once these beds thaw, things move very fast. They warm up earlier than in-ground soil, but they also freeze faster at night. So today, I want to walk you through what to do when your beds wake up and what you can prepare before the thaw. When the thaw starts, it usually happens from the top down. The surface softens first, then the deeper layers follow. And in my experience, even from the outside thaws before the inside. Raised beds warm up earlier because they're elevated. They drain well, and the soil is usually looser and darker. That's why raised beds are often ready to work days or even weeks before the ground around them. But here's the part most gardeners don't expect. Raised beds lose heat quickly. Cold air wraps around all sides, and there's no deep ground warmth to buffer the temperature. So even though they thaw early, they also freeze faster at night. One of the most important things to watch in early spring isn't the daytime highs, it's the nighttime lows, especially on clear nights. When the sky is clear, all the heat that your raised bed collected during the day escapes back into the atmosphere. There's nothing holding it in. So if the forecast says 0 or -1 Celsius on a clear night, your raised bed might hit -2 or -3. Cloudy nights are safer because the clouds act like a blanket. My rule is simple. If the night is clear and it's hovering around freezing, I cover the bed. If it's cloudy, I usually don't need to. Because raised beds lose heat so quickly, having some frost protection tools on hand makes early planting so much easier. This is the frost blanket I used last year. It's lightweight, breathable, and adds just enough insulation to protect early crops from those -1 or -2 Celsius nights we get here in Halifax. I had planted my seedlings out, I think it was end of March or early April, and everything looked good in the 10-day forecast. The nighttime lows were fine, but then snow crept up on the forecast. And the bed that I covered, everything else that I had planted last year could tolerate a light frost, so I wasn't too worried, even with snow coming, except for my lettuce bed. So I made sure to go out there and put my frost blanket on just to make sure that everything would be okay, especially in that lettuce bed, because they're a little bit more, they're not as cold hardy as some of the other things that I had planted. I'm going to put a link up top to the video where I went out after the snow and after it had melted a little bit for me to get out to the garden again to show what I uncovered under the frost blanket and how all the seedlings did after that surprise snow. It's actually worth seeing. Spoiler alert, everybody was fine. This photo was taken a few years ago, and I only had the one frost blanket at the time because I usually just reserve it for my lettuce bed. I usually only have one bed that would require it. Everything else can kind of handle some like a light frost. And then because we had a really cold snap and I wanted to add some protection, I just used old bed sheets. They totally work in a pinch. They're not perfect, but they absolutely provide just a little bit of protection against a frost. Hoops with frost cloth are one of the easiest setups you can find. They trap a little pocket of warm air and keep the cold wind off your seedlings. A cold frame is useful. I personally wouldn't invest in a cold frame just because I have so much to cover. But if you have a small space, something like a cold frame, it's like a mini greenhouse. It warms the soil faster, protects seedlings from frost, wind, and heavy rain. It can be useful. It has its applications for sure. And then cloches or snowbells or whatever you want to call it, these are really good for individual plants like early lettuce or kale or herbs where you just need to cover that one little plant. You can use, empty soda bottles, milk jugs, and cut off the bottom just to have a little mini greenhouse effect, a little bit of protection. And you don't need all of these. Even one simple layer of protection can make a huge difference in early spring. When the thaw hits, the soil warms quickly, sometimes surprisingly quickly. You'll be able to work it long before the rest of the garden, but those nighttime dips will still be a factor, especially here in Halifax. So think of protection as part of your early spring toolkit, not a sign that you planted too soon. Once the soil is workable, start with the hardy ones, the crops that don't mind the freeze-thaw dance. Things like spinach and peas, kale and radishes and arugula. These are the plants that thrive in the early season and reward you for being ready. So yes, my beds are still frozen, and yours might be too. But this is the moment to prepare, because once the thaw comes, raised beds wake up fast and you'll be ready to make the most of it.